Alright, welcome back EDP students. In this video we're going to look at connecting hardware. So let's first look at an LED. So here we've got a schematic and we can start having a look at our schematic. So this is a representation of what we want our circuit to look like before we go and build it. So let's have a look at each of the components in our schematic. So up here we have our source or our positive, and this is 5 volts. Down the bottom we have our ground, and you can think of that as the negative, and it's 0 volts. So this gives a potential, a difference of 5 volts between these 2 points. Okay. Between this, we have a current limiting resistor, okay, and we need this when we use LEDs, okay, because we can't have too high of a current going through an LED or else it'll blow up. The next thing we have is our LED. So this is a light emitting diode, okay, and it will glow if the current passes through it the correct way. We then have a switch. So this switch is open, so the current can't flow through the LED. So you can see that the LED, the arrow is pointing towards the ground, and this is the way we want current to flow, such that our LED turns on. So when we close our switch, we should see our LED turn on. So this is well and good, but we want to use our Arduinos to do the same thing. And we want to write code to be able to control the LED turning on and off. So on our Arduinos we have digital pins that we can control in our software. Now in our software we can decide to make the pin high or low. So low is our 0 volts, and if we have 0 volts here and 0 volts here, there's no current flow and our LED will be off. Whereas if we set the pin high, and on our microcontroller that's 3.3 volts, then we will see that the LED will glow. So the last thing that we're going to look before we look at putting together this hardware and the code is our breadboard. So to build our hardware in the labs, we're going to use a breadboard, and a breadboard looks something like this, okay, and you can see all these holes, and this is where you can make connections with components. Now all of these holes are connected horizontally as seen here. Okay, so this middle section, all the horizontals are connected. They're not connected through the middle though. On the side, you can see that all of these are connected. Alright, but there is a gap here. Alright, so now we're going to look at building our actual circuit. So the first thing you can see is we've got our breadboard, and we're going to add our Arduino board. Now we need to orientate it such that our USB is facing out, and we'll connect our USB cable here and connect that to our PC. Now you'll notice that all the pins on the Arduino board are labeled, and the first thing we're going to do is connect a wire from the ground pin to this rail here. This means that if I need to access ground from over here, I can just connect to this rail here. So I'll add that in. Okay, so now I've got a connection from ground to this rail. The next thing that I'm going to do is add my resistor. So I've just put it here. It's not connected to anything right now, But what I wanted to connect it to is one of my digital pins. And you'll notice on the board that you've got pins numbered that start with D. These are your digital pins. So we're going to pick one and connect it to our resistor. So I've connected our resistor to pin D4. Next, I'm just going to add another wire so that I can connect our LED. So I'll add our LED in. Now we have to be careful with our LED because we have to put it in the correct direction. So there's two ways of knowing which way is the correct direction. So our negative, or our cathode, has the larger piece of metal inside when looking in, okay, and it's called the anvil. Also, the negative side has a shorter leg, and you'll see this in the labs. So we're going to turn the LED around because I want to connect the negative to ground. So I'm going to move my LED here such that I've got my resistor connected to my LED, and then I can connect to ground. So now you can see that we've got our digital pin connected through our resistor, connected through our LED, and then to ground. Now we're going to look at coding this in our Arduino IDE. So when we load up Arduino IDE, we get this template code as we saw in previous videos. So we have our setup and our loop, which runs over and over and over again. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called LED pin and give it the value 4. And the reason for doing this is because if you remember earlier when we created our circuit, we connected our LED to pin 4. Now, we could just use the number 4, but if we have a lot of things connected, we want to be able to easily identify which pin is connected to what. And so it makes sense to give each of the pins a name depending on the problem we're solving. So my LED pin has the value 4. The next thing in the setup, which happens once at the start, we're going to add the code pin mode, and this function, pin mode, is taking 2 arguments. Now, what pin mode does is you need to assign if you want your pin to be an input or an output. So, for example, an input might be a button, whereas our LED is an output. So, what we're going to do with this function, the first argument is going to be our pin number, which is 4. Okay, and we've stored it in a variable, but you could just write 4 here as well and it would work. The second argument is output, because we want this pin to be an output. And this step only needs to happen once, so we put it in the setup. Now we're going to go to our loop, and I'm going to write a function call to digital write. So digital write will change the state of a pin. So I want to change the state of my LED pin to be high. So I write digital write LED pin and change it to high. So this means that on that pin there'll be 3.3 volts. Now, for the way that we've set up our circuit, the LED will be glowing right now. We're then going to put in a delay, as we saw in previous videos, and this delay is for 1000 milliseconds, or 1 second. We then are going to add another digital write but this time we're going to set the pin low, or 0 volts. And what this does is turn off our LED. We're then going to add another delay for another second. So we have our LED on, or glowing, for 1 second. So we turn it on, wait a second, then we turn it low, so we turn it off, then we wait a second, then we turn it on, wait a second, turn it off, wait a second. So it should be flashing every second. It will be changing between high and low. Now, one thing to note, in the lecture notes, the LED is connected in a different way. And I recommend you look at this because it changes what happens here. Alright, thank you very much, and that's it for this video.